The Special Investigating Unit, under the leadership of Advocate Andy Mothibi, is expected to brief the media on its interim findings in the high-profile investigation into the Tembisa Hospital. Now, the probe, as you will recall, was authorized finding serious allegations of irregular procurement, potential corruption, and mismanagement of public funds. This report is likely to be a significant moment, not just for the health sector, but perhaps also for broader public accountability in South Africa. And so, of course, we are anticipating important disclosures just about how procurement systems were bypassed and how, some were implicated, what early recommendations the SIU might also be making for disciplinary or criminal action as well. So let's unpack this further. Joining us to look at the significance of this moment and to help us understand what we might expect from the SIU's interim report is Mark Heyhood. He's a social justice activist who has been following that story closely. Mark, good afternoon and thanks for your time.
Good afternoon and thank you for having me.
Mark, I know it's obviously happening tomorrow, so there might be a playing of imaginary crystal ball of sorts at this point. But obviously we've seen what's transpired to date. And for context's sake, let's look at what triggered the SIU's investigation into the Tembisa Hospital, why this case has drawn such intense national attention as well. Books have been written. We obviously saw damning revelations also emerging. Perhaps just bring us up to speed.
Yeah. So to understand the context, we have to go back 4 years to the murder of Babita Deokaran, who at the time was one of the most senior people in Gauteng Health Department, responsible for finances, who had uncovered suspicions and evidence of tender fraud at Tembisa Hospital, had made a list of companies that she believed were involved in dodgy contracts and had forwarded that list to the chief financial officer of the Gauteng Health Department and said that it should be investigated. As we all know, horribly, tragically, Babita Deokaran was assassinated in August 2021, and that really catalyzed investigations and questions that have gradually provided more and more evidence of the fact that Tembisa Hospital, as Babita Deokaran suspected, was a nest of thievery and of corruption. There was an initial SIU report into Tembisa Hospital delivered to Premier Panyaza Lesufi in December 2022 with certain findings, but this report was authorized by President Ramaphosa in 2023, and I think that what we are going to hear tomorrow is probably going to be one of the most important reports that we have ever heard from the Special Investigative Unit, and it's going to name names, and it's going to point to the scale of corruption. It's going to point to the modus operandi of the syndicates that were fleecing that hospital. And I think it will tell us a lot, not just about Tembisa Hospital, but about what is probably going on in other hospitals in Gauteng, because we know that Tembisa is not alone. It was just that hospital that happened to have been exposed.
Absolutely, Mark. And even if we're looking at the likely findings in the interim report, the expectations when it comes to names, when it comes to figures, when it comes to trends, when it comes to patterns, it has been explored. But what are the expectations on that front? Even just the public outcry about alleged ghost suppliers, inflated contracts. Is this something that the SIU is expected to address directly in tomorrow's briefings, or does that come with different legs as well?
I think that they will address it in tomorrow's briefings. They've given, some prior information about what this report seems likely to contain. For example, in August, when we held a memorial symposium for Babita Deokaran, Leonard Lecheto, the chief operating officer of the SIU, said a little bit about what the SIU has found. He mentioned that there had been 111 disciplinary referrals in the Department of Health arising from the investigation. He mentioned that there had been 23 administrative referrals, that they're going to make recommendations regarding criminal prosecutions to the NPA. He mentioned the enormous figure, and it has been confirmed by Advocate Andy Mothibi, of up to 2 billion, in fact, slightly over 2 billion rand in corrupt contracts and tenders at this one hospital alone. So yeah, we've had some, some prior headlines, if you like, but the SIU's reports are always very detailed. They explain how findings are arrived at. And so I think it will give us an insight, a deep insight into what is going on and what needs to be done.
Mark, this obviously has to coexist with other arms of state as well, MPA, the Hawks, other law enforcement agencies. And I wonder if you could also speak to how that comes into the picture. I'm asking this because there's also questions about leakages and interference as well. That's something that also has to be addressed.
Yeah, so we know that the SIU has been working hand in hand with the Hawks. We know that what the SIU does ultimately is make referrals to, for example, the NPA, to the Hawks for further investigation. But because of the seriousness of this, there has been a very important collaboration all the way along through the course of this investigation, because it just has huge implications that knock into a whole number of areas of criminal activity, tender rigging, dodgy appointments of people to be hospital CEOs just to position them in a place where they can control money flows and access to resources. So I think quite a number of arms of state have been involved in this.
Well, Mark, also just from a governance perspective, there are broader implications if the SIU obviously confirms systemic failures at the hospital. I wonder if you could speak to that, and even government, civil society, the public watching with bated breath for the tone and the content of the report, because ultimately we want to see what comes next, right?
Yeah. Well, again, we started talking about context. I think you have to look at Tembisa Hospital and this report in the broader context of corruption in Gauteng province and corruption in Gauteng Health Department. The figures that SIU has suggested they're talking about at Tembisa Hospital run into a couple of billion. I would suggest that the figures of corruption in Gauteng Health Department as a whole over 10 years amount to over 20 billion rand. So clearly you have a huge governance problem in this one department, which has been going on year after year after year. There've been reports, there've been investigations, there've been special committees set up, but nothing has improved. So ultimately it is a governance question. It's a governance question at the level of the top provincial authorities, but it's a governance level all the way down to the role, for example, of hospital boards, which are meant to have oversight. It's a governance question in the sense that how do you and me and the public have better real-time oversight over the expenditure in Gauteng Health Department? They have an annual budget of 67 billion rand. How do we make sure that that money is not stolen as it is at the moment, or a large part of it?
Well, Mark, there's obviously more questions than answers. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for weighing in at this hour, making sense of what we can expect ahead of that SIU briefing tomorrow under the leadership of Advocate Andy Mothibi there. Mark Heyhood weighing in for us at this hour.